First of all, I don't know any of the show except for Barney the dinosaur, and I haven't watched any of the episodes yet. But I don't want to watch any after watching this one. It started when I had finished work and was on my way home. When I was 5 minutes done with my trip, I spotted a Walmart. I thought to myself that I should go in and get a movie because all of my movies at my house sucked. I went inside and found some movies, a few good ones, surprisingly. Just when I was about to make my way to pay, I stepped on something plastic. I looked down and saw a DVD case named Barney and Friends. I picked it up and examined it. It said it had 6 episodes, but the names were scribbled out with pen and had little scratches on the case. I was fine with that. I went to pay for all of my movies and the DVD I had picked up. The DVD itself cost about $8. I went home and put my movies in first, and they were pretty awesome. I remembered the Barney DVD I had gotten from Walmart and put it into my DVD player. However, every time I tried, it just wouldn't start. I checked the DVD, but it was clean and there was no damage done to it. I put it back in this time and it finally started. The menu popped up. The menu didn't have any music and everything was written in Comic Sans MS font. Strange, I thought to myself, but I carried on. The menu had 4 options: play all, episode selection, options, and the 4th one was complete gibberish. I tried options first, but it was just a white black screen. Disturbing, I thought. There was no button to go back on the menu. I took the DVD back out and put it back in again, and it finally came back to the original menu. I decided to press play all. It started with Barney, but he was sad. He was sitting on a wooden bench and he didn't speak. He was sitting on there for what felt like forever, but after a while he finally spoke. "Nobody loves me anymore. I will teach them a lesson." He then looked up at the camera and smiled. But it felt like he wasn't so much as smiling at the camera, but like he was smiling at me. I had the instinct to just turn the damn thing off, but I don't know what it was, but my brain just told me to just keep on watching. And then immediately cut to the next scene. This is the part where the episode became disgustingly fucked up. A child was walking down the road with Barney, who immediately came out and scared him. The kid immediately tried running away from Barney, but Barney wound up grabbing the kid's legs and dragged him off of the road. He pulled his leg so hard that the entire leg came off. I was disgusted by this, and I covered my eyes with a pillow, but like any curious person, I peeked and watched the rest. God, I'm a fucking idiot for doing that, I'm not gonna lie. Barney began eating his leg. Let me say that again. He ate his fucking leg. Sick bastard seemed to really enjoy it. He ate it until there was literally nothing left, and when I mean he ate the damn leg, he fucking ate every little bit of it. He then dragged the now unconscious kid back and ripped his stomach open. He began to eat his corpse for 3 minutes. For 3 long fucking minutes. Barney was just sitting there and eating the kid. eating literally every single part of him. I still remember the sound. The sound of that fucking sound. I gotta calm down. That fucking sound, I swear to God, it was disgusting. I wound up going into the kitchen sink and vomiting. I couldn't make it to the bathroom even if I tried. The blood that dripped down from that fucked up dinosaur looked pretty damn real. It looked like I was watching a fucking crime scene. I honestly was very tempted to call 911 because of how disturbing this episode was. I wound up going back to my living room and I wound up missing some of the episode itself, but it wound up cutting to the next scene. Apparently, this was the last scene that there was in this godforsaken episode. A girl was playing on a playground. She was just sliding down the slide, doing pretty much the kind of thing any kid would pretty much do. But then Barney wound up showing up and walked up to her and said, "What are you doing?" Barney said to the girl, but his voice was a lot deeper. The girl didn't reply. And because of this, Barney wound up getting very, very, very angry. I could even see a slight bit of red in his eyes. Blood even started to pour down from his sockets as some kind of weird contraption built into that fucking suit. It kept on pouring and pouring and pouring down his face, staining every little bit of that suit. I couldn't look away no matter how hard I tried. I couldn't look away from it. I don't know why. It just kept going down and down till it wound up literally staining the costume itself. The little girl was obviously terrified. She didn't really have a lot of time to react. She didn't have any time to even... She didn't have any time to react. What else is there more to say? Barney lunged at her and... I don't know how it was possible, but he began to chew her face off. Biting slowly, but surely, until he just kept on ripping off more and more chunks of it. I still remember those screams. I don't care if it was acted or not. It's to this very day has traumatized my very mind. I didn't look at it for very long, which is probably a good thing. When I finally looked back up, I saw Barney. His entire suit completely stained in God only knows what liquid. Much of his suit was pretty much stained red at that point. Even the parts that were very deep purple were stained so badly that you could easily see it. He then spoke his final line in the episode. I took care of everyone else. Now I'm gonna take care of myself. Then, without any kind of hesitation, he reached over to his back into some kind of pocket of some sort. And about as quickly as I could blink, he grabbed something and wound up pumping his head full of lead. It was relatively quick. There wasn't really much that came out of his head. I could tell that he had wound up eating metal because I could hear a slight popping sound that came from the weapon itself. The episode wound up ending afterwards. I didn't really know how to comprehend what I had just seen. I just sat there. I didn't know what to really think or do. I just contemplated what I had just seen. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not someone that's usually fazed by something like this, but what the fuck did I honestly see? Who the fuck made something as demented as this? It didn't make any kind of sense. At least, not to me. After a while, I had somehow managed to compose myself enough. I walked over to my DVD player, ejected the DVD, took it, put it back in its case. And without a single word, I grabbed my baseball bat from my garage, and I just let every little bit of my frustration, anger, and fear out onto it. It was satisfying to watch that thing break. Not like it really would have mattered anyway. But I let that damn thing have it. Who the fuck cares if it cost $8 or not? Once I had finally managed to destroy the damn thing, I took it and just chucked it into the woods behind my house. I didn't bother looking for it. I didn't bother trying to find it. If anything, some animal probably wound up finding it and taking it off to God only knows where. Maybe it got buried, maybe it just started eroding away, God only knows what, but I just don't care, and I have no intention of looking for it again. I still tend to question to myself how something like that could have even managed to get on something like such. I just don't get it. Even if this was a sick, disgusting prank by somebody, it was still extremely fucked. Although I guess I'm kind of happy that I was the one that managed to get the damn thing, because God forbid any actual kid wind up finding this and seeing what I had seen. I still haven't gotten over that situation that happened to me. And even to this very day, I can't really get those memories out of my brain. Maybe that's for the better. Maybe it's for the better. Well, this story was definitely something that I really don't think was that good. I'm a little bit disappointed to some degree, because I actually think I remembered narrating the story many months or hell even years back. I think it was called the Barney Walmart DVD thing. I really don't honestly remember. And now that I think about it, I kind of understand why I really didn't want to sit there and narrate this for the second time around. I'm just gonna be straight out honest when I say that I basically did what I could try and do to make this at least about as decent as I possibly could. I mean, if I couldn't sit there and make it up for the actual storyline itself, then at the very least I could kind of make it at least a lot more dramatic in such a way where it would seem like at least slightly believable. But overall, there was even things that in the story I actually had to willingly go out of my way and change during the full narration because the whole story itself is nothing else more than just a pure, unadulterated ridiculousness. I mean, where do I even begin with the storyline itself? I mean, for one, we specifically have the very startup of various cliches, basically being the individual going to a said store, garage sale, things of that nature, specifically Walmart, and going and wind up finding a bunch of DVDs. Now, that's not really so much the issue. They really wouldn't be much of an issue had it not been for the way the protagonist actually wound up going out and finding the DVD, specifically on the ground, with everything being blank, and the ridiculous cliche of everything being scratched out. I mean, at this point in time, you could pretty much make these kinds of videos a complete and utter drinking game, and you'd probably be completely plastered by the end of it. I mean, if that wasn't bad enough as it is, you know, it's just lazy, honestly. I mean, you couldn't have sat there and maybe just had it be a regular or a simple DVD. I mean, sure, that's a cliche in of its own self, but at least it would be slightly more realistic than sitting there and finding something that's torn up, just a bunch of torn up piece of shit on the ground. And why is it that every single Lost episode video game pasta, well, not every one of them, but some of them, go out of their way and just be like the protagonist sitting there and just finding it randomly lying down on the ground? I mean, don't get me wrong, I tend to find a bunch of stuff at Walmart that probably shouldn't be on the ground, or some that probably should be on the ground because of how bad it is. I mean, hell, there's literally a $5 bin at Walmart that's quite literally filled to the brim with a grand majority of movies that are pure shit. But this is exactly one of the... But even on that end, I've never once found a DVD on the ground that was in a condition that was ever in that kind of condition, with specifically there being scribbles and everything basically being on, you know, the ground. And another issue as well, and look, I'm not judging this person. I'm not gonna judge anybody. You know, everybody likes specific cartoons. I mean, hell, I sit there and watch the Backyardigans in my spare time. I make fan art of that show. You know, I'm not trying to judge anyone in any way, shape, or form, but I am a little bit curious as to why exactly you would go out of your way and buy a Barney DVD to begin with. I mean, don't you think that's a little bit odd to a degree? I mean, at the very least, order it on Amazon or something like that. That way, at least it's a little bit more discreet, but, I mean, again, I'm not trying to judge this person. You know, everyone has their taste. You know, if it doesn't cause harm to anyone, do as you will. I don't really care, but it's kind of a small thing that makes me really tend to question many of these stories. I mean, at the very least, you could have at least incorporated that maybe you were buying it for like a family member or something. Or hell, you could just be outright and just say, oh, I'm buying it because I actually want to watch this and I enjoy this. You know, at least then that would be at least a little bit more realistic on that end. But this person just goes out of his way and buys it just for the sake of buying it. Now, there is one specific positive part I can really give the story, is that the price range for the actual DVD is realistic. I mean, it isn't like, you know, it was scanned for free, or $6.66, or 5 cents, or 1 cent, or $1, or any of the stupid shit like that. I'll give that the benefit of the doubt by saying that at least it's realistically priced. I mean, especially for something like that, you know, just being $8, or hell, even if it was $5, it would be more realistic. So I'll give the story credit on that end for really going out of its way and just kind of doing that, but outside of that, though, the rest of the story just continues to completely fall down into the abyss of pure, unadulterated nothingness, aka cliche land. I mean, where do I even need to begin with that? I mean, we have the person going in, watching the DVD, and then there's like Barney literally being some kind of psychotic dinosaur, creepy cannibal, whatever the hell, just eating people just for the sake of eating people, and blood, gore, and then we basically just get to the end with Barney sitting there and eating a bullet just for the sake of doing it, which in my honest viewpoint is probably one of the stupidest things you could really try and incorporate in any Lost episode or video game pasta, with the character just sitting there and just outright just ending themselves just because of the fact that there's no way you can sit, either the writer or the story just couldn't consider putting in something at least a little bit more decent on that end, or just wants to sit there and just end it right then and there because they're bored with the story. I mean, I don't understand it. I mean, it's one of the most crappiest cliches in the book, and yet you couldn't have just come up with something at least somewhat different. I mean, you sat there and you made the price realistic. What made you think that you couldn't sit there and come up with a more realistic plot line? I mean, the whole story itself just falls completely flat in and of its own. I mean, I've already said that, so I'm just gonna move on. The rest of the story just continues on with the protagonist being spooked out, like many Lost episode pastas in their heyday tend to be. And they basically just go and they bury the DVD, which I didn't include because I didn't feel like including it. But it really just makes me shake my head in complete and utter agitation sometimes. I mean, sure enough, I could probably go out of my way and state that this is probably this person's first story, but that's not even an excuse anymore. I really hate it when people go out of their way and try and make an excuse for the author, saying, "Oh, it's his first time, you shouldn't be so hard on him," or something like, "It's not that bad, for a first story," or something like that. And for anyone who wants to make excuses for the individual like that, stop it. Get some help. Primary reason why I go out of my way and say that is because there are many good Lost episode pastas out there. There are countless videos, countless everything that you can go to learn how to make a good, decent creepypasta. There's no reason to sit there and just continuously copy and paste typical cliche garbage down onto a specific story just for the sake of doing it. It'd be one thing if it was a troll pasta, which I'm very much doubting given the fact that given the fact that the author really tried to make this out as being as serious as possible, which in my opinion just makes the story all the more laughable. It's just a terrible story for what it is. And yet I've gotten so many people requesting me to re-narrate the story, so I guess that's fine. I mean, I pretty much gave it what I could. Now, are there really any other kind of positives that I can give with the story? Besides the price being decent, I guess I could probably go out of my way and say the ending is at least slightly different compared to many other Lost episode pastas, with the person just going out and burying the thing after smashing it with his bat, although that's a cliche its own self. That's kind of just something I guess I could probably say was just slightly different. It's not even really good, it's just different. In relations to the grammar of the story, it is genuinely abhorrent. Very, very abhorrent, actually. I mean, the level of grammar in this storyline is just god awful. I mean, there's commas where there shouldn't be. The punctuation in the story is terrible. I mean, there's usually mostly just commas in this. There are parts in the story that are separated where they shouldn't be, specifically with, literally, I'm not joking with any of you. There's literally one sentence that was separated as its own separate paragraph. Why do you do that? I mean, and it's apparently this is the last scene there was. That's literally its own separate paragraph. Why would you go out of your way and do that? Why not just incorporate it into the second paragraph itself? Or at the very least, throw it into the end to kind of sit there and add a bit of a final resolution or something, or just kind of help with the resolution itself. Another part of the story that really just makes me completely and utterly wretch is that the the dialogue in this, when a character says something, isn't separated from the story. I mean, sure, you don't have to do that with various stories, but it's always a good recommendation to sit there and go out of your way to just separate it. That way it makes the story flow a little bit better, at least grammar-wise, that is. I mean, take it from me, if I write a creepypasta and someone has like dialogue, I'm gonna separate it from the main story itself and just continue on with the rest of the paragraph in its own separate paragraph, just to kind of make sure that everything just, like I said, flows by well. What else is there in relations to this god-awful grammar? I mean, it's just bad. That's all I can really say. There's so many commas in this story, that so many run-on sentences in this story, that I'm quite surprised I was able to even narrate this story properly without screwing something up. I guess I've narrated these things so much to a point where I've just mentally started just putting them there. So I guess I'm a lot more skilled at doing this, I guess, but I really don't know. Like, I really don't know. The grammar's just god-awful in and of its own self. And you want to know something else that I really hate when it comes to pastas like these? In the very end, which I did not include, it says, "If you ever find a copy of it, review it, you will die." Do I even need to begin going out of my way and discussing how absolutely fucking stupid that is? I don't care if that pisses someone off. It's completely and utterly moronic. In the best way possible. For one, you added the VER as a way of sitting there and, trying to spell view, but you obviously got lazy and you didn't even bother. It's an entire run-on sentence, and it doesn't even have a period at the end, I might add. But if you ever find a copy of it, view it and you will die. Like, what the fuck kind of ending is that? Like, what the fuck kind of ending is that? I mean, are you trying to piss people off? Are you trying to sit there and just fuck around with people? Because it's kind of obvious that's what you're doing. I mean, the ending, like, that phrase alone is something that so many of these god-awful stories incorporate into their pastas, and I don't understand why. This isn't a story written by freaking... I don't know, might have been written by a third grader now that I think about it. But this isn't this isn't a crappy little story that you sit there and you make in third grade to try and freak out your friends. This is supposed to be a creepypasta, something that is supposed to, in this genre specifically, be realistic, something that's supposed to tell a good story in the line, something that's supposed to sit there and make people either think or shit their pants, not the whole "you will die" kind of bullshit. No, never ever incorporate that in your story. It throws everything out. Like, any good thing that I said about this story, I take back completely. Because this just ruins it. Like, flat out ruins it. And you couldn't even went out of your way to spell the word version properly. You had to sit there and be completely and utterly lazy and just put in the VER. And then not even properly throw in a period at the end. How lazy do you have to be? I mean, go out of your own way, and this is for everyone who makes a story like this and plans to put it up online. Put it through freaking Google Docs or something, people. If you don't have Word, use freaking Google Docs. Or use something. Hell, even the Creepypasta wikias that have this themselves have their own editing tool built into it. There is no excuse whatsoever to sit there and just be a lazy little fuck and not sit there and fix up the grammar in the goddamn story. If the story itself had at least some good grammar, then maybe I would be a little bit more positive with this story. Not by much, but still. But I'm monologuing here. Overall, this story was just so god awful and terrible in every single shape and form. That's really all I have to say. Now we're basically getting into the whole primary final thoughts of this video. Normally there would be a theory being thrown into this story, but there just is none. There's nothing that could even remotely explain anything in the story there's nothing logical with the story to even come up with a theory, which is a major disappointment because the last Barney creepypasta I narrated, even though that story itself was bad, at the very least, I could at least throw in a theory in relations to the actual protagonist watching this or getting a fever dream or something like that. But this story just there's nothing to really work with this story. So there is no theory or explanation or whatever. I mean, the story just doesn't provide anything to make up for any kind of theory. So we're moving on to the primary final thoughts. My final thoughts on the story is this. This story is just downright terrible. There is not a single redeeming quality, with the exception of two very minor little tiny baby crumb that I could possibly say is something, I guess, specifically with the price, but that's not even anything, to be honest. It just isn't. The story lacks any kind of decent storytelling. The grammar in the story is just downright terrible. I honestly, if I had really went out of my way and narrated it as it was, I can definitely tell, I definitely would have just stopped and would have moved on to something else. Because there's just no way I'm going to sit there and narrate it as it is. I'm at least going to try and do what I can to make it at least tolerable, which is what I basically did with my original narration of the story. Now look, I'm not so much trying to harp on the author here, and I'm going to go out of my way and say this right now. Do not go out of your way and harass or attack the author or anyone like such, even though the story itself is bad. If you want to really go out of your way and do something that could actually potentially help the narrator, go out of your way and try and provide a bunch of necessary criticism to the story itself. Try not to go out of your way and, well, okay, maybe that's a little hypocritical of me to go out of my way and say, so I won't say it, but for what it is try and give out as much criticism as you can. The one thing that we want to try and strive to do here on this channel is to help various writers, narrators, and the like, or anyone for that matter, to make sure of it that they're capable of really going out of their way and writing a good story. And who's to say this author probably this probably was an early story written by this author. I'm not trying to excuse it, but it's quite possible that this author very likely has improved gradually over the years, and I really do hope that is the case. And I really do hope that the author who may watch this, might not watch this, who really knows, can really understand the reasoning why I'm going out of my way and making this video, just to make sure of it that the person themselves this person improves on the work that they do. But getting back to the final thoughts, because I completely derailed that, it's just not a good story. A lot of things within the story just completely and utterly failed, and it's just bad. That's all I can say. My primary final rating for this story, in relations to the characters, I give it a 0 out of 10. The character is completely forgettable, nothing even remotely interesting, no backstory, nothing of that matter. Just your typical cookie-cutter protagonist that most of these stories tend to have, with nothing really new, detailed, descriptive, or anything of that nature. I mean, you could probably replace the protagonist with the literal giant gingerbread men, and it would probably make a little bit more sense with the story. The plot line of the story is your typical generic god-awful story. It is terrible, therefore I give that one a 0 out of 10 as well. In relations to the grammar, I actually will give this a -5 out of 10. First time I'm actually going out of my way and give a negative. This kind of thing is completely inexcusable. There is no reason for the grammar to have continuous levels of run-on sentences. There is no reason for specific parts of the story to be its own separate paragraph when it shouldn't be, especially if it's only one sentence long. The dialogue itself outright needs, and I repeat, needs to be separated from the story. That way the story itself flows out well. There is no flow with the story. The cliches in the story, which I will be throwing in its own rating, is so many to even... There's too many to even mention. Blood, gore, violence, unnecessary DVD being found on the ground, it's just all over the place. So for both of those sections, I give them a 0, for the grammar thing, -5 out of 10, and for the cliches, kind of an opposite thing, but I give that one a 10 out of 10 in relation to how many cliches there are. My final rating, just a pure 0 out of 10. No effort, no anything put into it, nothing. Not even the 2 little increments of actually good or something different with the story can even save this. But, like with what I go out of my way and state with these pastas, it's only my opinion. My stupid, silly, dumb, personal opinion. Nothing more, nothing less. And honestly, if you all happen to find this story enjoyable in one way or another, that's perfectly fine. We're all entitled to our thoughts, opinions, viewpoints on these specific stories. Even if you somehow manage to find this story enjoyable in the most ironic way possible, that's perfectly fine. But more importantly, I'd like to hear your own thoughts on the story. What did you all think of this? Did you guys think that the story was at least decent in some way? Do you think that there were some things that I may have probably missed with the story that were actually good or that were bad? I would really like to hear your thoughts down below. Criticism is always welcome in every way, shape, and form. So I always encourage all of you to really go out and give your own personal reviews down below. It's a great way to potentially help me and potentially help out any potential authors and the like to better up their work. But yeah, what did you guys think about this video? Did you guys enjoy it? Did you guys not? And what would you have done to make the video better? Oh wait, that's completely that was completely screwed up, my apologies. But overall, I will say this. Thanks again for watching today's video, you guys. If you guys enjoyed it, if you guys didn't enjoy it, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, or dislike if you didn't really like the video itself. Every dislike, every like that you guys can give me can definitely help me improve a lot more on my video making skills. But yeah, with that said, thanks again for watching today's episode, you guys. I'll be seeing y'all in the next video, and like always, roll the outro because I'm out. In fear and surprise, as your eyes widen, your mouth goes dry with each battered breath. You try to scream, your mind begs to leave, glued to your computer screen. The killers they slash, the tapes burn and crash. The cartridge you bought will be your final haunt. The rituals of hate will seal your fate. The tears you shed will be from the fear-gripping horror-driven nightmarish gore-filled, terrorizing, hateful, burning, violent, rage-inducing, knife-slashing, blood-splattering, silent screams. Only time will tell if you will escape this online hell. Your horror-filled obsessions will come with its own regressions. Your pathetic screams will not be heeded in any way, because your nightmares will come at any day.